Hey guys, Shane here from Genesis Offroad. In this video, we're going to be installing our Omega dual battery system. This is our dual battery kit that uses a Red Arc DC to DC charger to charge up your accessory battery. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about this system and how it works, you can go watch our overview video that gives you a quick explanation of everything. Or we also had a sit-down interview style discussion with a rep from Red Arc. Red Arc is known for making high quality DC to DC chargers. We're known for making it easy to install electrical systems. So we decided to team up with Red Arc, and you can go watch that video to learn more on the backstory about this system. Okay, to get started on the installation, like I said, this is the same steel battery tray that's used in several of our other systems. So for the sake of consistency, we're gonna cut over to the installation video from the Gen 3 dual battery kit to show you how to remove the stock plastic battery tray and get our new battery tray down in here along with the fuse box back in place. Then we'll come back here and show you how to get the Omega system installed. So now we're under the hood of the JL. It's the same, it looks exactly the same if you have a gas engine Gladiator. So what we're gonna be doing today is pulling the stock battery tray out of here. And it looks like there's a lot going on, but it's actually very simple. I'm gonna walk you through it step by step. So we're gonna start on one end and we're gonna remove the fuse box, the battery, and the air box. That's gonna open up all this space so we can get that stock tray out. So we're gonna get started by disconnecting our battery and pulling the battery out. Okay, let's start with loosening the negative post clamp with a 10mm socket. We'll set that clamp aside. Then we'll loosen the positive clamp right here with a 10mm. And we'll just put this clamp back here out of the way. Pull this sleeve off of here. Okay, we'll use an extension with a 10mm to pull the battery bracket out right down here. And then we'll lift the battery out. Now, most of you know the JL has two batteries. There's a second smaller battery down below your fuse box. So just be careful with your factory post clamps because those are still hot because they're connected to that other battery down there. Okay, let's go ahead and get this air box out of the way. We're gonna pop this cover loose with an 8mm socket and pull the top cover off. And there's also a hose clamp right here. We're gonna loosen that so it's easier to get this cover off. Okay, we'll pull this cover off of here. And the 10mm bolt on the fender. Now this air box is just gonna wiggle out, so we'll just pry it out of here. Now we'll move the power steering fluid bottle out of the way by removing this single 10mm bolt. And we're just gonna set this over here out of the way. Okay, now let me show you how to remove the fuse box. Take this cover off, then we're gonna take a 7mm socket. There's 4 7mm bolts in here. Now you may know on the older Jeep JKs, there was only one wire that fed power into the whole fuse box. On the newer Jeeps, the JL and the Gladiator, now there's 6 or 7 or 8 different wires that come into the fuse box depending on what options you have on your vehicle. So you may see a different number of wires connected to the fuse box here, and that's normal. But those stampings are very small and then my eyes are too old to see those. So I'm gonna use a little Sharpie and label each one of these at the position that they go from 1 through 7. Now we'll remove each one of these wires coming in the fuse box with a 10mm. Okay, now to get this fuse box out of here, we're gonna use a small pry tool. There's 4 little clips that clip the top of the fuse box down to the lower base. So I find it easiest to start with the back corner over here, pry that out and lift a little bit, and then pry the front ones up, like that. And the fuse box will lift up. And then on the bottom of the fuse box, there's 4 large connectors that have all the wires that go into the fuse box. So you'll just grab each one of these and kind of wiggle those loose, and those should pop off. So the fuse box base is held in place by 2 10mm nuts here and here, and also 1 Phillips head screw closer to the firewall. Okay, now the fuse box base can come out. We'll just move these wires out of our way and get this piece out of here. So the next thing we're gonna do is pop this cover off to give us access to the small accessory battery that's down below here. And we're just gonna kind of groom all these cables out of our way so that we can get this big plastic battery tray out of here. Okay, I'm gonna use some zip ties to kind of hold all these large connectors up out of our way. Okay, now we need to start popping some of these little wire retaining clips out of here. We're using a little panel removal tool. I've just got a little pry tool. So we'll pop those out of there. Okay, now this wire bundle here, they use this little plastic channel to help protect this wire while it's going across here. We really don't need this piece. So I'm going to use a small screwdriver and pry this, pop this little plastic case open and remove that. There we go. So we won't need this. Now let's pop the little plastic clips that's holding the post clamps along the top rail of the battery tray. And we'll set these clamps out of our way. Okay, now we need to move these ground wires that's over here inside the fender. Your Jeep, your vehicle may have a different number of wires here on the fender based on your options and based on your year model. So if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, that's okay. So I've got one that goes over here to the negative post clamp. That's to ground the body to the battery. And then I've got another one that comes over and goes into the positive harness, goes down below the engine, and I believe that one goes to the engine block ground. And then this one that runs along the inside of the fender here, this one goes down and grounds to the frame. So we're gonna remove these two right here with a 10mm and a 13mm. I'm gonna put this nut back in place so I don't lose it. Now, I know we've got a lot of wires kind of spread out around here, so what I like to do is use a label maker and label the wires where they go. So you can see on here, I've already got a couple of white labels. If you don't have a label maker, just use a piece of tape and a Sharpie. That's gonna help you out later because I know you got a lot of wires in here. So we're just gonna take these two ground wires and move them out of our way. Okay, now we're gonna pop the cover off of the small accessory battery using our 10mm socket again. There's 4 bolts holding this cover down. Now we can pull this cover out of here. Okay, so now you can see the small auxiliary start-stop battery. This battery is used for the engine start-stop system. When you pull up to the red light and you stop, the engine shuts down. All of the electronics, the radio and the fans and everything, run off of the small battery. And then when you lift your foot off the brake and the engine starts, it cranks off the large battery. So we're gonna replace this small battery with a second full-size battery in our kit. So we're gonna pull this out and it will not be reused. Now, not all JLs have this small auxiliary start-stop battery under here. It changed whether you have that or not based on some of the engine options, the e-torque system, and what year model you had it. Some years it was available, some years it wasn't. But if you don't have it in here, just skip this part of the video. Okay, let's pull this cover back and we'll pull the ground off of here with a 10mm. Okay, there's our ground. And there's our positive harness. So we'll set this positive aside for the moment. Later, we're gonna connect this to the factory positive clamp on the big battery up top. Okay, so let's talk about the negative post on the small battery now. Now, originally on the earlier model JLs, this was a straight pass-through wire. It went from the negative of the small battery straight up to the negative of the large battery. That's this wire right here. Now, on the newer model JLs in around 2021, Jeep changed that. So now instead of going straight from one battery to the other, the ground on the big battery actually goes to the body. So we don't want to leave this one disconnected. This end that came off of the small battery can be taped up and just tucked up under the fuse box in a minute out of the way. So we're not going to reuse this end of the wire, but we're going to leave it just leave that wire connected on this end. Now we can pull the small battery out. Now we're ready to pull the bolts that hold the tray down in here with a 10mm socket. We'll start at the firewall. There's 4 on the firewall. And then there's several down in the battery tray. There's a couple more on the tray inside the fender. And then the last 2 on this little bracket up top on the fender. Okay, now we're ready to pull this big bulky plastic tray out of here, but I'm gonna kind of groom these wires back out of our way a little bit to make this a little bit easier. I'm gonna set all this over here out of our way as much as possible. And now we should be able to lift this tray up and out of here. Okay, let's grab our new steel battery tray. We're gonna flip this upside down. The Omega kit comes with this custom piece of heat shield material from Design Engineering. This is gonna go on the entire bottom surface and then wrap around the side facing the engine. This is gonna be to protect the battery from the excess heat coming off the exhaust. So let's go ahead and take this adhesive liner off. And we're gonna line this up right here at the corner of the tray and just kind of roll this down. Now, the lithium battery that we recommend with the Omega kit is designed to be used under the hood, but like most lithium batteries, it has a safety feature that will turn off the battery when its internal temperature gets above 167 degrees to protect it from thermal runaway. So this material will help the battery run much cooler for a lot longer. We'll just slide this right in here onto those studs on the firewall right back here. The front of the tray is going to go in front of this tab, and we'll bolt it down. All right, we're gonna reuse our factory hardware that came off the firewall to hold that tray in place. We'll get that started right here. Then let's go ahead and start our other hardware at the front. We'll go ahead and tighten everything down. Okay, now the tray is in here. Next thing, we're gonna start working on putting the fuse box back in. To do that, we need to get one little piece of hardware off of the plastic cover piece, but we're gonna remove this little clip off this plastic piece here. Just pinch that on the back side, and this little piece is gonna pop out. Then we're gonna take this piece and we're gonna pop it into the little rectangle hole on our battery tray. Okay, now we're gonna grab our fuse box base and we're gonna put this back in. You notice there's a couple of holes here, and this is where the Phillips goes. So we're gonna put this right on top of that hardware on our tray. Slide this in place like that. Okay, now let's reuse our factory hardware to hold that base down to our tray. And the screw goes closest to the firewall. All right, now we're gonna snap these large connectors back down into the fuse box base. Let's get our zip tie out of the way. The one on the fender is gonna go lay across this way. And these connectors are gonna snap into that base, like that. This one goes closest to the engine. Okay, now we're ready to set the fuse box back in here. Lay it right on top. And these will just snap in place. So now let's start grooming these cables that go into the fuse box back into place. We've got a bunch of cables moved over here out of our way. So we're gonna pull all this stuff back out so we can get to it. We'll start grooming these cables where they go. Let's bring our ground wires back over here. Get these back in place. Here's our ground from the small battery. We're just gonna tuck that down here, down low underneath our fuse box. That can just go right down there. Okay, here's my number 1. Number 2 goes to the positive post clamp. 3. Okay, so on my JL, I don't have anything on position number 4, but then wires 5 and 6 were laid across the fender over here, so we'll bring those back over and groom those in place. And then I got a 7 hiding down here somewhere. Here's number 7. It kind of fell down a little bit. We'll bring that back up top. And there we go. All right, then we'll run these down with a 10 millimeter. Okay, now we're going to tighten up these 4 7 millimeter bolts inside the fuse box. And then let's get these grounds reconnected over here on the fender. So we'll tighten these down with a 10 millimeter and a 13 millimeter. Now let's make sure all of our wires are just tucked in here against the fuse box, nice and close, so that when we set our battery down in here, we don't pinch any of these wires. All right, now we can pop our cover back on, and we're ready for batteries. Okay, we're back now. You should have the new steel tray installed. You should have your fuse box back in place. Go ahead and attach the power steering bottle with the factory 10 millimeter bolt. And also, I forgot to mention in the original video, if your dipstick is bumping the edge of your battery tray, you can gently push that dipstick towards the engine just a little bit and get you some clearance in there. Now we're ready to set the batteries in here, but before we do that, I like to make sure the whole area is clear. All these factory wires and any aftermarket wires, get those pushed up against your fuse box real good. I've got my Warren winch cables, I've got my power box wires, I've got my cables for the SDI E-Click suspension system, all moved out of the way. So let's start with our cranking battery. Okay, let's drop in our cranking battery. We're gonna slide it all the way towards the fuse box. And let's drop in our accessory battery. Okay, now let's grab the Omega lid and we're gonna install it on top of the batteries with the logo facing the fender side. So it'll drop right down here. And we've got our caps on our batteries just to make sure that we don't accidentally short anything out as we're putting a big piece of metal on top of here. So let's grab our bolts and we'll bolt the lid down. And let's secure the lid with a 13 millimeter or a 1/2 inch socket. Okay, now let's take a look at the alpha charger. We've got it installed onto our mounting bracket using the 1 inch long bolts and the flange nuts. So we've already got it secured onto the bracket. Also went ahead and installed our wire harness cable. This is super easy. You're just gonna match up the colors, black, brown, red, and yellow to the labels right here on the charger. Then this is the temperature sensor that's gonna go over here to your negative battery post. The polarity here, which post these wires go to does not matter. So don't worry about getting these in the wrong position. Over here is the ignition on circuit. So this tells the charger to turn on when your engine is running. So that's how it knows to turn on. This cable is especially important on the JL and the JT that have the variable output alternator, because when it sees your cranking battery is full, the alternator will kind of free spool to try to save you a couple drops of gas, and it will turn down its output. So it's normal to see the alternator only putting out 12.6, 12.5, or maybe even a little bit lower. So this cable tells the charger to stay on and continue charging your battery while the engine's running. So this is just a simple fuse tap with a ring terminal on it. It's very similar to the ones that we use on our Gen 3 power hubs and very similar to the cable on the classic charger, but this one has a ring terminal on it. So that cable is going to get installed right there. So I think it's easiest to go ahead and get all of your wires hooked up here, and then we've got to get this installed into the fuse box. So let's just set our charger right up here on top for a second and take the cover off your fuse box. And you can see that I'm already using F57, which is for your driver's side heated power seats for my SDI electronic suspension. So I'm going to use F52, which is for your cigarette lighter adapter. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out this 20 amp fuse for F52. So whichever one you pull out, make sure you put that into our fuse tap, because this one right here is going to be for your factory fuse, your factory circuit, and then the smaller 5 amp fuse is for our charger to turn it on. So we'll go ahead and route that in here, turn around this way, install that back into the fuse position. Now with our fuse tap installed, let's get the cover back on. We're going to move this around just a little bit to get that wire routed over here towards the corner of our fuse box. And I've cut a little notch in my fuse box cover to allow those wires to come out. So when I flip this over, I'm going to move these wires over here to the corner and get their cover back in place. Let's go ahead and remove the 10mm nuts off the firewall. Let's go ahead and put our little sticky pads on the bottom and move our wires over here out of the way for a second. And don't forget the little sticky pads here to hold this up off of the fuse box. And then we'll set this down on the firewall and reattach our factory nuts. This bracket has a little bit of adjustability, so I'm going to slide this all the way towards the firewall and tighten those back down. Okay, let's go ahead and route this temperature sensor cable over here to the negative post on the accessory battery, and just find the cleanest way you can to get this routed. I'm going to tuck this between the battery and the fuse box and push that down here out of the way. We're going to get the end over here by our clamp. And then all this extra slack, I'm going to fold back up and put our bread tie back on there to keep that looking nice. Okay, with our temperature sensor over here by the negative post, this is a good time to talk about how we're going to attach not only the wires from the Omega lid, but also your accessories. So our Dakota Lithium battery has threaded posts here. Also, if you're running an AGM battery from Full Throttle, those also have removable posts. If you're using a battery that has fixed posts, you're going to want to use our marine style post clamps. You can buy these as an option on our website, or you can pick these up at your local auto parts store. So which one do you want to use, the regular battery post or the bolt? Well, it depends on what you're doing, right? If all you're hooking up is something like an auxiliary fuse box, like an S-Pod or a Blue Sea fuse box, and you've only got one set of wires coming over here to your accessory battery, you may want to just take that ring terminal, put it right onto the bolt along with the temperature sensor for the alpha charger and the wire going into the Omega lid, and stack those up and put that bolt right into the battery. But if you're running a bunch of accessories, you might want to go ahead and just use the normal battery posts, screw those right into your battery, and then use a marine style post clamp. Go ahead and set that on there. Then you got this taller stud with the wing nut to secure all your accessories. If this post is a little bit too large for your accessory wires, you could go right onto the clamp right here. It's the same, whatever's most convenient for you. So personally, I like these marine style post clamps. We use them all the time. So let's tighten the post clamp down with a 13mm or a 1/2 inch socket or wrench. And then all of your accessories you can stack up underneath this wing nut. So I'm going to attach my wire going to the Omega lid. I'm going to attach the temperature sensor for the alpha charger. And I've got some other accessories in here, but I'll come back and hook those up later. But if you got winch cables, if you've got our power box or our power outlet kits or the quick connect cables on the front bumper or anything else, just stack those up on this terminal here and put your wing nut back on. Let's do the same thing for the positive post. We'll take this little cover off, put our post on, grab our marine post clamp. Again, if your wire is too small to go onto the stud on the back of the post clamp, you can just take this nut off here and attach your wires onto that bolt. Okay, with our post clamp on there, if you want to go ahead and hook up your accessories here now, you can, or if you want to come back and do that later, that's fine. Okay, now let's work on our cranking battery. We're going to bring our factory negative post clamp all the way over here, and it's going to go to the negative post on your cranking battery. Go ahead and untangle this long factory negative post clamp. You might need to rotate the end of the clamp from the sensor here by loosening this 10mm nut and stretching it out like this, then retighten that nut on there. so that our clamp will flow and fall right onto the post right there. Let's make sure this clamp is seated all the way to the bottom of your post, and tighten that down with a 10 millimeter. Now let's remove this nut off the factory clamp. Put our wire right here, put the nut back on. And last, we're ready to work on our factory positive post clamp. So let's bring that up here. Take our cap off. We'll put our factory positive clamp right up on there. And as soon as you do this, you're going to have power to the vehicle. Again, you want to make sure your post clamp is seated all the way down to the bottom, and then tighten that up with a 10 millimeter. Now I'm going to take this 10 millimeter off of the left-hand side of the clamp and attach the small positive wire that came from the positive post on our little ESS battery that we removed. Now, if your Jeep didn't have the small auxiliary battery down there, just don't worry about it. You can just completely skip this step. So put that wire on there, put our nut back on, and then on the other side, we're going to remove this nut to attach the positive wire from the Omega. Our wire there, the nut back on. And we'll put our dust cover back up here. Okay, the last step is just plugging in the charger. We'll bring our wire harness over and plug that into the Omega lid. And you'll see the charger power up. That all the way in, and flip our little tab to lock that in place. Okay, now the whole system is installed. All the wiring is done. It's just that easy. Last thing I want you to do is come around and double check all of your connections. If you have removable battery posts, make sure your posts are tight. Make sure your post clamps are tight. And check all of your factory post clamps. Take another look at all your factory wiring. Make sure everything is routed nice and neatly. Nothing is getting chafed or pinched. And make sure you got your protective cover in place. So that's it. All the wiring for the Omega system and the Red Arc charger is done. Now, if you have some solar panels, you can plug your solar panel right into the Anderson connector on the backside here. This Anderson style connector is one of the most popular connectors for solar panels. If yours has a different type of a connector, like an MC4 is another popular connector, you can get a little adapter to change that from an MC4 to an Anderson plug. Just plug that in right there. Again, all the wiring is done for you. The solar will come in to the charger. The Alpha charger and the Classic charger both prioritize solar input, meaning if it sees energy coming in from your solar panels, it's going to use that first and not consume power off of the alternator. So that's a cool feature if you have solar panels. Again, when you're ready to hook up your accessories to your accessory battery, just run your accessory cables to the clamps here. So then all of your accessories that you have connected directly to this accessory battery will run only from that accessory battery, and those devices will not drain down your cranking battery. Also remember that all of your factory fuse box circuits, all of your factory circuits are hardwired directly to your cranking battery. So that means your radio, your headlights, your interior lights, your factory 12-volt socket, all those kind of things will always run from your cranking battery. This system does not link the batteries together like our Gen 3 Power Hub does. This keeps the two batteries completely separated all the time. When the engine is running, your charger will be charging up the accessory battery. When the engine is off, the charger turns off and all your accessories run from that accessory battery. If you've got the Alpha charger, you can go ahead and download the Red Vision app and start playing with the settings in here. Now, this is just our installation video. So in this video, we're not going to go into too many details about how to configure and all the options on the Alpha charger or the Classic charger. We'll do a separate video to show you all about how to use it. So that's it. I hope you found this video helpful. If I missed anything, leave me a comment down below. Let me know. If you run into any trouble along the way on this installation process, please feel free to always reach out to us on the phone or emails. We'll be more than happy to help you out. Please hit that like button if this video was helpful for you. That really does help us out a lot. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to have a lot more helpful tech tip videos, how-to videos to help you get the most out of your electrical system. And thanks for watching.